Hello, everybody. I'm Jamie.
And I'm Albert.
And this is a podcast where we are trying to find our next 5-star rated movie. And when we agree on a 5-star rated movie, this podcast will die of old age.
Oh, so sad. Today we're reviewing A Real Pain, which is written and directed by Jesse Eisenberg. And he also stars in it along with Kieran Culkin.
Yep.
And it has 2 Oscar nominations. But A Real Pain is about 2 cousins who are going on a Holocaust tour in Poland after their grandma passed away. So we're going to talk about that today. But first, we wrote down what we gave this movie secretly on this whiteboard. And we're going to try to guess what each other gave it. I'm going to guess, Jamie, that you gave this a 3.5 out of 5.
Okay.
And what do you think I gave
think you gave it a 3.0.
Okay, a 3.0. So we rate out of 5. And we are going to initially give our spoiler-free thoughts, and then we'll reveal our scores, and then we'll get into spoilers. Yep. All right. So what did you think of The Real Pain, or A Real Pain?
Okay, so I really liked it.
Yeah?
What did you think?
I liked parts of it, and other parts I thought didn't land as strongly as I would have liked. I think the main thing is that, first of all the Oscar buzz about this is about Kieran Culkin's performance.
Yes.
So yeah, he's been winning all the awards, like at the Golden Globes and other award shows. So I kind of went into this expecting to be just completely blown away and floored by his performance.
Yeah.
And it was very good.
Right.
He was good, but
your expectations were too high.
Yeah, maybe they were a little too high.
I feel that.
Yeah. So, because the other part of this conversation was, is this going to also get a Best Picture nom? And it was kind of like in that discussion very much in the bottom half of the top 10. And it didn't get one. So I was a little surprised by that, not having seen the movie. But now having seen the movie, I think I agree with that.
Okay.
I think the movie does some interesting things, but it also is very kind of even keel throughout.
I totally get that.
Yeah. And I think that's where I felt a little mixed. I kind of wanted it to go further, but I was listening to an interview with the cast, and Jesse Eisenberg was talking about the fact that, this is a Holocaust movie, but every Holocaust movie usually is so dramatic and so intense, and he very intentionally wanted it to not be like that, not kind of overdoing the
drama.
And almost being exploitative about it. So he wanted to just take a very real, everyday type of experience of it, but let it still have the power there. But it is weird, right? Because the Holocaust is so intense and is so, there's been nothing like that in history. Yeah. It's a singular event. Yeah. And so almost to kind of downplay it felt weird.
I didn't feel like it was downplayed. I still felt like the sadness that the characters were, experiencing as they were processing it all. But
okay, I did too, but maybe it just didn't hit like other Holocaust movies or.
Here's what I'll say. Yeah. So the reason I liked it, and the reason why I don't think everyone will like it, I related so much to both of them. Okay. It was weird. There were conversations that the 2 cousins were having that I was like, I've had this conversation with myself. I'm not crazy and I don't have multiple personality disorder, but like I have that like inner battle of like, oh, I want to be friendly and kind and make friends with this person. Oh, but I also want to be considerate and like not be nosy and butt into their life in a way that's intrusive. And so it was so weird watching both characters and being like, oh, I totally understand him. Oh, I totally understand him too. Oh, this is crazy that I'm like relating to both equally. So it's
like
almost.
The angel and the demon on your shoulder is like these 2 characters.
It was so weird. But that's why I was like, the whole movie is character driven. And so I think if you can't relate to either of the characters or both, then you're not going to like this movie. You know what I mean?
I agree with you. The
Holocaust.
You fall? Well, the Holocaust thing is like a backdrop, right? Right. It really is about totally the characters. And just to set some context, you have Kieran Culkin playing Benji. Yeah. And then you have Jesse Eisenberg playing David. Yeah, David. And they're complete foils to each other, right? So Culkin's character, he's spontaneous, he's kind of super extroverted, life of the party.
Yeah. Deep thinker.
Yeah, super honest about everything, sometimes maybe too much so, it seems like. And then you have Jesse Eisenberg, who is playing like a very anxious, nervous,
organized,
very by the book, super OCD, kind of person, right? Yep. They're like so opposites. And for me, I've definitely identified with Eisenberg's character.
Yeah.
So I'm very OCD. I'm very unemotional, like David
unable
is.
to cry.
Yeah. So that is totally me. And there is an element of I could relate to that character where he looks at someone like Benji and goes, "Oh man, I wish I was more like that."
Really?
Yeah. Like it would be great if I was super spontaneous. When it comes to like traveling, for example, with my wife, have everything planned out, and she's more like go with the flow and, that kind of thing. So I would like to just go on a trip and not have zero things on the itinerary, not have looked up anything. But then I just know the whole time I'm going to be thinking, I know there's probably something awesome I could be doing right now if I just had done the research. And, there were two elements here. On one hand, they each felt like they were just playing themselves. Like Eisenberg, he just feels like he wrote himself. Who he is in real life, And so he was just kind of playing himself. And Culkin, I haven't seen him. Like I haven't seen Succession. Have you seen Succession?
Yeah, he's very similar.
Oh, he is. And even in the interview that I watched, like he's sitting just like Benji sits in the movie.
Even in like Scott Pilgrim, right?
Oh,
he plays like a similar vibe.
Yeah, I forgot that he was in that. That's right. And so. It just kind of feels like they're playing themselves. When I think of a amazing performance, it's almost someone who plays a completely different kind of person from who they are or who they normally play, that you're like, wow, I can see how much they transformed. Whereas Culkin kind of feels like he's just being himself, Even in the interview, he was like, yeah, it just came naturally to me,
Yeah, exactly. I agree.
But I definitely identify with David. But it also feels like maybe there's a little too much of a yin yang. Like in real life, I kind of feel like, people are a mixture of different things. Yeah, I am very, I guess, kind of methodical and unemotional like David.
Yeah.
But I also think I am honest like Benji is. Not to the degree he is, but as a New Yorker, I think New Yorkers are kind of like, yeah, you just like say it like it is. You don't need to be super
like a people pleaser.
Yeah, you don't have to be like overly polite,
Yeah.
But I don't know. I still felt conflicted about his character.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it in spoilers, but there is a point where I'm kind of trying to figure out, I don't know, do I even like the guy? Or is he just annoying?
David or Benji?
Benji.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and
I think that's like exactly what David's going through too. Throughout the story, he is battling this, man, I really love my cousin, but at the same time, I hate him. He's so annoying. Pain. Yeah, he's a real pain. And it's like interesting to see that because I feel like that makes his character complex, where it's like I could see both.
Yeah.
Humans are just contradictions, and this whole movie, I felt like both of them were contradictions.
Yeah.
Because Benji is such a loving, deep feeling character, but at the same time he's like not afraid to step on other people's feelings and step on toes, and it's such a contradiction.
It is, because it's like if you are sensitive to other people, shouldn't you be a little more sensitive about how raw you're being sometimes? And then the same thing with how straight-laced David is. He's so he's anxious, but he's also by the book, follow the plan, obey the laws, but then he's also not going to tell anyone else to do that, Yeah.
Like, he's not gonna
kind of impose that upon
anybody else, which I felt like was another contradiction. So it was cool to see,
because he's often the one that is telling Benji, hey, like, calm down, like you're making people uncomfortable. And he's the one who's sensitive kind of to what other people are feeling, right?
Yeah. And you feel like he shouldn't be. Like, he should be more focused on his own personal, like, feelings or whatever is going on in his head.
So, yeah, I mean, I think I agree. They are multi-dimensional characters.
Yeah.
But it made it a little hard for me as a viewer as I'm watching to try to know, am I supposed to side with one person or am I just kind of watching them interacting? That's kind of what it ended up being. I felt like I was just hanging out, watching them hanging out with each other. It felt a little aimless at times, but I think the ending was really what kind of hurt it the most for me. But we'll talk about that in spoilers. But there's another big part of this, which is about grief, right? It's about grieving and how, why Benji is the way he is. A lot of it is because he's kind of processing the loss of his grandma.
Yeah.
And I thought that was, for a comedy, it was nice that this got to those levels of bigger themes of grief and emotion. But it also, again, like the other things in the movie about the way the Holocaust is handled, the grieving element is kind of hinted at in parts, alluded to in conversations, but never really, I feel like, has this moment where I felt that pain so much.
Interesting.
And maybe, again, it's because I'm too unemotional that I need, if we're going to feel that kind of pain, if we're going to feel like the pain of the Holocaust, if we're going to feel the pain of grandma loss, like I need it more visceral in a way. But it was very understated in moments, and it was kind of there and explained why Benji's feeling and acting the way he is, and it's kind of on just a look on his face as just sitting there quietly for a moment before he like goes off again, and in those things it was very subdued for me, and so I never really felt that emotion or felt that grief that he was feeling.
Interesting. I felt like the movie was really playing into this whole generational problems where, I mean, Jesse Eisenberg does point this out in the movie, point blank, about how their grandma had to deal with this crazy, horrific thing in life of the Holocaust. And meanwhile, their modern day problems just don't compare. Like, it just feels like, why is he so anxious and struggle with OCD when his life has been pretty good on the surface? And then the same thing with his cousin. Why has his cousin's life been so, difficult when his life has been so, normal? Like, he's been spared from having to overcome this crazy thing like their grandmother. And in the end, what has it turned him into?
Yeah.
And so it kind of is asking these questions of what is each generation's main pain or main problem.
Yeah.
Which I thought was really interesting. But I kind of agree with you. The ending didn't really tie that together.
So do you think Jesse Eisenberg or the film is saying, hey, we are way too soft as a generation? Like, come on, like our parents have lived through much worse things. Like, we should just kind of pull ourselves up by our bootstraps? Or do you think it's kind of
I think that's the question maybe David is working through. But I don't think that's what the movie's asking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it does also raise a question of when they're having this kind of intimate conversation. I think Benji alludes to this idea of just all the pain happening in the world, all the things that are really genuinely sad.
Yeah.
Like, you have genocides and all these like natural disasters.
Right.
I mean, the LA fires, like, that have been happening, and, just these real things. But most people, you just go through the day and you try not to think about all that stuff. Because if you let yourself just continue to, I guess, think about and ponder those things, like, it's very hard to handle.
You'll fall into a hole.
Yeah. It's hard to, I don't know, I guess just continue to live in that space.
Yeah.
And it almost seems like Benji is trying to do that. Like, even on this Holocaust tour, he's trying to get into that space and let the impact of all that pain really, like, for letting himself feel that.
Yeah.
And he's kind of upset when people are trying to deal with it in a way that's like, oh, let me gloss over it a little bit.
Yeah.
Because it's just too much.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you kind of see that maybe that has some negative impact on himself too. Because, like, can a person, should we live that way? I guess is a question that I think the film is asking.
I think so too.
Yeah.
It's kind of asking two questions at the same time through both characters, which is very interesting. But
so I do think this film does raise a lot of interesting questions. So when it comes to the Oscar race, what do you think? Do you think Kieran Culkin deserves a Best Supporting Actor?
I don't know. I still think he did like a really fantastic job. But I kind of agree with you that it felt like he was playing himself.
Okay.
Maybe it's not, though. Maybe that's not who he is at all in real life. And in that case, he did a fantastic job.
Yeah.
Like
but it does seem like he is like that.
Yeah, it's true. I was sold on his performance, but it does seem like he's like that in real life.
Yeah. I agree. He's very charismatic in the movie. Every scene, you can't kind of not look away from him, for better or worse, right? He really does kind of command your attention.
Yeah.
And he is the real centerpiece of the whole movie. But when it comes to Best Original Screenplay, I think it was kind of weak. So
yeah,
of the 5, I've seen that and The Substance so far, and I thought The Substance screenplay was stronger. But I don't know. Do you think it deserves in terms of kind of a original screenplay Oscar?
I think mainly because of the ending, I'd say no.
Okay.
But yeah.
Okay. Well, let's get into revealing our scores, and then we can get into the scores. Yeah, or get into the spoilers. All right. So you guessed, or I guessed that you'll give it a 3.5 out of 5, and you probably gave it a 4.
I did.
Oh gosh. Okay. I thought you might go.
It was a low 4.
Okay, because of the ending.
Because of the ending, it was a low 4.
So I was
almost dropped to a 3.5, but then I was like, I liked the characters too much.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you guessed that I would give it a 3.5 out of 5, or 3.0 out of 5, and I did give it a 3.0 out of 5. So you totally nailed it.
Winner.
Yeah. No, you are the winner. So in terms of the characters, it's revealed that David is a well-adjusted human being, even though he's, OCD and all that stuff. He has a wife, he has kids that love him, he has a job, lives in New York City, kind of a successful person, right? And Benji, he's basically living on his mom's couch, kind of aimless throughout life, just smokes joints and wandering through life. And also, he's attempted to commit suicide, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting that in a way, almost like Culkin's character, Benji, is seen with more positive traits, I feel like, in the movie, whereas David's seen a little more negatively. But on the flip side, like, one is much more well-adjusted and the other one is not. And so when we kind of go back to those themes of, should we be that emotionally open to all the pain around and suffering around the world? I don't know if that is a smart way to live, right? Because I do think it could send you into a kind of dark place like Benji's kind of maybe living with. I don't know. What do you think?
I think that you really do have to strike the balance, because I agree at the beginning, David is kind of seen as the annoying character and Benji is the cool one. And that's mostly because we're seeing Benji through David's eyes. And then towards the latter half of the movie, Benji kind of starts to fall apart a little bit. Yeah. And then he becomes the nuisance and the annoyance. And you really feel more sympathy for David. And so the movie kind of flips. And I feel like they're both equally flawed and they both can learn from each other, which I think is kind of what the movie was all about towards the end, was them sort of realizing David needs to embrace his feelings more and tap into more honesty. And then Benji needs to, start actually living with motivation and have more goals and taking care of himself. However, the last scene kind of felt like they didn't learn anything. Like they just returned to their life. And I think that Benji lives in the airport.
This is the terminal. Yeah. The prequel to the terminal.
He actually just lives in the airport. He's not living on a couch anymore. And it's kind of like, did they learn anything?
Exactly.
Like you're left with that question.
100% agree.
That frustrating.
Killed it for me, because you go on this whole journey. And yes, only 90 minutes, but it does feel like you've spent all this time with these people and the other people in the tour and all that stuff. So Benji's going through a lot. He's learning from Marsha and all these other people. But at the end, and they have this one moment where the two of them kind of have this bro hug and, are like reconnect in a way, which is good. But then Benji just sits back down, and then it ends with like essentially the same shot that the movie began with the same kind of face, blank, sitting there. You don't know what's coming next. You don't know where he's going to go or what he's going to do. Is he going to try killing himself again, or is he not? Is he better? Like, we have no idea.
Yeah.
And it's left open-ended, and it did feel like that whole mirroring of the opening and closing shot, it really felt like nothing changed at all.
Yeah. I think what changed was my view, but like I enjoyed the journey myself, and I feel like I learned stuff. I came out of the movie feeling changed. I assume the characters did, but again, we didn't get to see that, which I wish we had. Yeah,
because I'm not even sure if David's gonna go back and change either.
I really wish Benji had gone to dinner with David after he invited him. Like, that would have been such a much sweeter way to end the movie.
Yeah.
Just a very simple, scene, maybe even no dialogue, of just him hanging out at David's house, them all eating together. That would have just been a much sweeter ending, I think, instead of him just chilling at the airport alone.
Yeah, because there is so Binghamton is 3 hours away from New York City in upstate New York, and my wife actually went to college there. But from a New Yorker's perspective, Binghamton is a different world, right?
Yeah.
So the whole, like, when Benji was going through what he was going through, he kind of is bitter about, like, you didn't even come visit me. And David's also like, why don't you just come down? It's so close. It symbolizes the kind of how they're in two totally different worlds.
Yeah.
So for Benji to actually step into New York City, and us seeing him on the streets of New York City at the footsteps of, David's apartment or whatever, it would be symbolic of that kind of him stepping out of his world into kind of embracing, getting ready to face the real world.
Yeah.
But we didn't get that. He's in a transitory place.
Yeah.
Right? We don't know.
Yeah.
Like, does he stay there? Does he get on a flight to somewhere else spontaneously? And he's not talking to anyone either.
Yeah.
And
I agree too, like when he invited Benji into his life, it was a more meaningful invitation than just, hey, come over for dinner.
Yeah.
It was a, hey, come be a part of my life. And then his complaint about, like, David not being a part of his life and ignoring him for 6 months or whatever. For him to be like, no, I don't want to go to your house for dinner. It's kind of like, well, did you really mean that earlier when you were upset that he didn't call you for 6 months? Like, were you really upset about that? Because
you wouldn't have gone anyway.
Yeah, apparently you probably wouldn't have cared either way. I don't know. So yeah, I think that last decision was frustrating. Oh, I still really liked both the characters. I don't know. I loved the dinner scene when David finally tells the story of, like, why Benji's been kind of broken this whole time, and reveals the sleeping pill overdose, and David finally gives us some honesty. Without that scene, this movie would have definitely gone down for me.
David is initially, from the beginning of the tour, is kind of resistant to say too much about himself and reveal too much. So now he does it kind of out of frustration, because he's kind of annoyed at Benji, and so when Benji goes to the bathroom, he kind of just vomits out all this information. And
then he's like, sorry, I'm oversharing.
Yeah,
I'm oversharing. Yeah. And I was like, oh, I feel that. I feel that so much.
I think what scene kind of threw me out of it a little bit was I was on board with Benji's character. I want to be more spontaneous and stuff like he is also. I am fairly extroverted, but not to his level. So I saw him as kind of a positive character until the cemetery scene, where he basically just in front of everybody calls out James, the tour guide, and goes like, you are just giving us all these facts, like, what's wrong with you, blah, 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 and all this stuff. He just goes off on the guy. And I'm like, I'm all down for being honest and giving constructive criticism, but you could still do it nicely. Like, being honest doesn't mean you have to be a jerk about it, right? And so that part kind of annoyed me.
But, like, he was lashing out at David there.
Was he?
Yeah.
He was
displacing his frustrations with David onto the tour guide.
even still, that's not okay.
No, I agree.
Right?
It's just
that's
like
so disrespectful.
It was so interesting to see him, get angry at basically a stranger when who he was really upset with was David.
Which makes Benji just seem even more like a child adolescent who never grew up.
Yeah,
and he is. And in that sense,
it made you like him less.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, and I get that it's kind of a complex character. Mm-hmm. But then I'm just left not knowing what to feel about either of them because they all have like positive and negatives. Not that every movie
like a real person.
Yeah, not that every movie has to have a protagonist, antagonist, that kind of thing. But that's a classic structure that everyone uses because it works, right? But I also appreciate, this is an independent film.
Yeah. And
we need to think of it in those terms. And so I don't hate the fact that there was no clear antagonist. Each person is their own antagonist, right?
Right.
And so that I'm fine with, but I'm just then watching, not sure who to invest my emotion and energy into.
Both of them.
Yeah, I guess.
The answer is both.
Yeah, and then in the end, I don't even know if we won.
It's so interesting the way that you consume a movie. It is just so different than the way I consume a movie. Like, we've talked about this before, but like our priorities are just different.
Yeah.
I need the characters to be good.
Yeah.
And you really need the plot to be good. Mm-hmm. And it's just like,
and the best movies have both.
I mean, the best movies have both.
Yes.
But it just kind of shows how if you're looking for a movie for character, you're already looking for that emotional connection or whatever. Whereas if you're looking for really good plot, I feel like you're more there for the cathartic feeling at the end, maybe. Of like, ooh, satisfying resolution.
Yeah, it's like watching a sports game,
Yeah.
Yeah, we won.
Yeah.
You feel like you accomplished something sitting on your couch the whole time for 3 hours.
Yeah, because I feel like I accomplished something, but it was more like an internal thing rather than like a productive external thing. I don't know. I'm getting a little wibbly-wobbly here.
Yeah,
but
now also I will say I don't think I've experienced intense grief like Benji has.
Yeah.
And that might also be why
it's
as
harder.
I see him going through what he's doing, I'm not able to personally relate emotionally.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's more intellectual. And I don't think the movie helped because it didn't really make me feel it or show me clearly. It just kind of told me this is what he's going through, and I guess hoped that I would be able to identify with that. Because, a lot of people have experienced genuine grief, but I know one day I will. So maybe then rewatching something like this will land
have a
stronger.
bigger impact.
Yeah. But I do appreciate character-driven movies. I do.
Yeah.
And I didn't go into this expecting it to be something other than a Sundance independent film.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, I know what I was getting into, but I think even in the character sense, I didn't feel like it was cathartic enough.
Okay.
Where it was like, oh yeah, I really felt something and experienced
really
something.
Changed.
Yeah. And so I think that's where it kind of left me a little
I do have to ask, have you seen Everything is Illuminated?
Oh, no, I haven't. Elijah Wood? No, I've had it on my watch list.
Similar.
Oh, okay.
It's like this movie, except a little less modern and more Wes Anderson.
Oh, okay.
So you probably would hate it. But I actually really love that movie. And so I couldn't help comparing it to this one.
How did you like it compared to this? Or how do you like this compared to that?
So I am working off memory. I watched it probably like 7 years ago. So it's hard to say. I feel like I need to rewatch Everything is Illuminated. But going from memory, I think I enjoyed Everything is Illuminated more. So if you really like this movie, you should watch Everything is Illuminated because you'd probably really like it. Especially if you are also a Wes Anderson fan. It's also really funny.
Okay.
Despite it being like a heartbreaking situation. So I'd also love to know which character you feel like you related to more.
Oh, yeah.
It just seems like you're going to relate to one of them, right? So let us know in the comments.
Yeah, give us percentages. So if you're 50% Benji, 50% David.
I'm probably 60-40. 60 David, 40 Benji, but yeah.
Whoa, I thought you'll be 60, Benji.
Really?
You're pretty extroverted. Come on, what are you talking about?
That's true.
Yeah, even that 60 seems like a low number.
Internally.
Where I'm like 100% David.
David?
No, I would say 80% David.
Okay, yeah, that's
with
fair.
20% Benji. I don't know.
Fair.
But yeah, let us know, and let us know what else you thought about the movie, and if you think is worthy of the 2 Oscars it got nominated for. And yeah, follow us on
Letterboxd, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts.
Yeah, and next week we're gonna be reviewing A Complete Unknown, which got nominated for I think 10 Oscars. Yep. So we'll see how Timmy does in that movie.
Good old Timmy.
Yeah. And join us next week as we continue our quest for the 5th star.